Hi guys, so today's how-to video will be basically on gearing your bike. So I remember this is basically for beginners. So I remember when I was basically brand new into this, I was scared when someone mentioned gearing because I didn't know what that actually means. So everything you need to know about gearing is on this page right here. Every single thing. There's nothing else you're really gonna need to know, right? Except for torque converters and jack shafts. That's a whole different type of setup. But most people really aren't doing that. They're not worrying about their top end with clutches and all that. Torque converters and all that stuff. But this is just normal gearing, right? So I did this based on a 35 chain sprockets you usually see on a 35 chain. On a 40 chain or a 41 U420 chain, this 12 tooth clutch, these are the clutches, right? These are usually 10s. They usually come in 10s, but in 35s, they only make the 12 tooth clutch lower, right? So let me explain to you. So these are your sprockets, right? These are your clutches. Ignore the lines, like they're not really making a difference. So what you'll see is when the ratio, like when you stare at your bike, your clutch, see how your clutch remains the same size? I try to draw it to the same size, but basically your clutch always usually remains the same size. If your sprocket is massive compared to your clutch, chances are it's usually a 70 tooth or above. You can just count the teeth, right? Obviously, so 70 teeth and above usually means you hit the gas, you just do a wheelie straight off the bat. And usually you're doing 30 miles an hour with that type of setup. Maybe if you have a high RPM engine, even higher, right? In my opinion, this type of setup's useless because, at least for me, when I start the bike, I fully just put on the throttle. And you can't do that when your bike has this type of ratio. Because when you put it on throttle, you literally do a backflip off the bike. So you want to gear it so that when you hold, at least for me, when you hold down the throttle, it just takes off smoothly, right? You want to find that point. That's basically that point where you won't hold it down and you won't lift the front tire, but it'll perfectly just move straight. That is when you know your ratio is perfect. So, and everything depends on that ratio. So I'll basically explain it. So when your clutch and your sprocket size are almost the same looking, that usually means your bike is geared for a top end build. So, and this is like kind of like in the middle, right? So with this top end build, when they're near the same, that usually means that you probably do 50 to 60 miles an hour most of the time, but there's a lot of factors to take into consideration with all that. So I'll just explain. So your ratio is your sprocket over your clutch. Here we have a 40 sprocket, 12 tooth clutch. 40 over 12 equals 3.33. You can just pretend it's a 48, right? So that means it's a 4 ratio. If you have a 48 tooth clutch, 48 tooth sprocket, 12 tooth clutch. That equals a gear ratio of 4, obviously, right? And suppose you have a 60 tooth sprocket and a 12 tooth clutch equals a gear ratio of 5. Now, remember that you can change these ratios because you can take this clutch size right here and grow it. You can't lessen it with a 35 chain. You can grow it. You can go 14, 17, 15, 19, all that. That all just changes your ratio numbers, right? That's all it is. That's just by this formula. You can see that just changes your ratio numbers. And the way it works is the closer this final number will be to 10, the more torque you'll have. More torque equals not as much top speed. The lower the number is to 1, the more speed you have, but almost no torque, right? And you want to gear it in the middle of that. So when you hit the throttle, you won't fly up with a wheelie. You won't go like this, but you'll just go straight like that. That's the perfect point. Everything depends on that. So I suggest you finish your motor and then worry about your gearing, because it all depends on your horsepower, on how you're going to lift from the start, right? And also your RPMs, right? So the key points I made here is that your engine, you shouldn't really run a gear ratio lower than 40-12. And that's what you're going to find with the 35 chain. When you search up, like usually 35 chain and these gears are made for the Doodlebug, Monster Moto, Motovox, all those six bolt sprockets, right? Most of the people use that, right? So shouldn't run lower than 4012, and I'll tell you why. First of all, your engine kind of like there's like a capacity. You can't just gear it to a 1 ratio, cuz you hold the throttle and your engine will just stay. It just can't handle that. So the 4012 is a 3.3 something, right? So stock, it will take you slow. You'll feel like you're not moving for a little bit because you're gonna be going like this, but then you're gonna speed up. That I realized is a really like cool ratio to mess around with, but there's stuff to remember. So that's a gear ratio of 3.333, I think, right? 40 divided by 12. So remember, so the number 4.5 or under usually means, or you could say 5 or under, 4 or under, anything you want, but around this number, that ratio or under equals or means that your clutch is usually going to burn like a lot. You're going to hear it like sizzling and stuff like that. You're putting a lot of pressure in your clutch. So I suggest you go with a nice heavy duty clutch, $50 clutch, right? Instead of the $20 one, because you'll really see a difference and putting less stress, because the gear ratio does like take a lot of toll on the clutch. And then gear it to your weight. I'm a 160-pound person, so I could get away with the 4012 at stock stages of the engine. If you're a 300-pound rider, chances are you can't. Chances are you're going to have to go with maybe the 5312, right? Because that'll be able to have more torque to get you off the line. And then gear to your tire. If you have taller tires, go with a bigger ratio, you know. If you have shorter tires, go with a closer ratio. And then gear to your RPM. If you're a 9,000 RPM type of like engine builder, there's no need to do a 1240. There's just really no need. You can go with even a 1264 because it'll feel like you'll get enough top speed, because I'm sure no one here is driving mini bikes at over like 100 miles an hour. So there's really no need, right? You just want to gear it to the point where you're getting not really more than 90 miles an hour, right? And it's all depending on your RPM. So I'll explain some stuff. So say you have a 7,000 RPM build, and you need to find a good gear ratio. You go on and like check like the gear ratio calculator, and it says you'll get a certain number. Yeah, you will get a certain number. You will get that number. It's going to take a little bit of time to get there, but if that's what you want to do, I guess it's like you can, but remember that the more RPM you have, the bigger sprocket you should get. The less RPM you have, the smaller, because it's just like if you have more RPM, you have more potential to go faster. There's no need to do this, right? There's really no need. So, like, that's basically it. And if you have any questions, you can leave them in the comment section, but I don't think I missed anything. Oh yeah, I can quickly just tell you. So, 70 tooth is usually what you get with all bikes. That's usually the stock gear. 40 tooth, you can go on Monster Scooter Parts. There's a $20 40 tooth sprocket, right? And it's pretty good. The 53 tooth is the more expensive one, so that you have to buy the split sprocket. This is where it really gets. This is a good sprocket. You can gear it however you want, right? You can go 53. You can go 53, 54, 50. It goes by the number, so you have to figure out on the calculator which like type of top speed do you want, how much acceleration you want. You know, it's all just dependent on that. So this is, in my opinion, the best option you have, the 1253. It's actually going to be a 1253 to 80 in the split sprocket range, so you choose whichever number you want. And they're really good sprockets. I recommend them. So, yeah, that's basically all it is. So it's really not that hard when you start buying the sprockets. You kind of understand straight away how it works. But, yeah. All right, thanks for watching.